Hello everyone, I'm Denise from the University of Sewing, and we're back with another block from Granny's 1930 Sampler. This is a really cool sampler pattern book by Ricky Timms. It's got some fantastic blocks in it. Actually, it's got 42 fantastic blocks in it, and this time we're going to talk about block number 32, which is way down here. And I want you to take note, that means we only have 10 left, guys. We're getting close. I'm getting kind of excited. And the one that we're going to talk about today is English paper piecing. Is this something you've tried before? I think people that do it really kind of generally love it. It's a very portable project, which is really cool. If you're finally getting out and doing some traveling, you could take it with you. And it's a little different today because we're not sitting in front of the sewing machine. We don't have any of those things to talk about. We've got some other things to talk about. First of all, let's look at our block. It's all hand done, guys. So this is a slow going block. Thank goodness it finishes at 8 inches. There are those crazy people that do a whole quilt out of these. I'm crazy, but I'm not sure that I'm quite that crazy. I'm going to flip it over so you can see what's happening on the back of this one. And I've left all of the papers in. Now, generally, when you've got one that's surrounded by others, you could take the paper out. So, you know, maybe this one I could take out because it's surrounded by others to stabilize it. Let's talk about the process and where to start. What are some things that you need to do this really cool little block? Well, you're going to need some fabric, of course. You're going to need some paper. We've got some really neat freezer paper. This is specifically for English paper piecing. You could also use, lots of other paper type things. I wouldn't use anything too heavy. I did try some cardstock that I had at home. I'm sure some of you have heard about using the comic book boards to fold your fabric around. I tried that. That's what this is. It's really sturdy, which on the one hand was great until I needed to take it out. And then it really was kind of annoying. So I decided something this thick probably is not the way to go. You want something with a little structure to it, but not too much. What else are you going to need? You're going to need a glue stick or some sort of fabric glue. We've got a couple different versions of this Roxanne's glue. This is the dab, this is the stick. This is the one that I like, and I'll show you how we use it. And I think you'll probably agree with me that this is the best for this particular application of it. You're gonna need some thread. We'll talk for a minute here about thread. English paper piecing, you've got a single strand of thread, so you do need it to be strong, but you also want it to be small enough or fine enough that your stitches disappear. So you could do something very thin. You could even use we have some beautiful Deco Bob 80 weight thread here in the shop. I found it a little too thin. It wasn't quite strong enough for what I wanted, but maybe I'm tugging a little too hard. Maybe it would work okay for you. The Aurifil 50 weight I thought worked very nicely. Depending on you and your eyes, you may or may not need a needle threader. I found it very handy. And when you are putting that thread in these milliner's needles, which is the ones that I decided I like the best. They're not super tiny. They are thin, but they're also kind of strong. They're not too flimsy. Using the needle, hand sewing, you may decide you need a thimble. And remember, the thimble goes on the finger that's pushing the needle through. I remember for a very long time, I thought the thimble was so that you didn't poke yourself with the needle. And that it sort of is, but it's more for the back end of the needle. You might also find some Wonder Clips handy to hold your papers in place as you're stitching, or to hold your paper pieced units together. So we've got Wonder Clips, which are great. Everybody's familiar with those, I think. And then we've also got these really cool Sew Tight magnets by Tula Pink. And they work kind of the same way, but instead of clipping to the edge of your piece, you can clip it right in the center. And these are some pretty strong little magnets. These are very cute. All of these things, and of course our book by Ricky Timms, and the Lizzy Albright in the Attic Window book by Ricky Timms and his friend Kat Bowser, these are all available on our website, which is universityofsewing.com. And of course we have them here in the shop, and would love to have you come and visit us if you're local. If not, remember, we do ship just about anywhere. We love to do that. So let's get into our block and talk about how it happens, how we make it look the way we want it to look. One of the other things that you might find really handy which I thought was really cool and very useful, is a rotating cutting mat. And if you're trimming things, this is a great way to do it. And then when we do the gluing, you're going to see how I think that this is pretty handy. So I've got my paper here, and I have labeled what unit it is. I'm going to turn it the other way so you can see it. And then in our pattern, it also indicated the grain direction. Don't ignore that, because we've got some oddball shapes. We don't really want to play with biased edges if we don't need to. So I've lined up the grain line of my fabric with the arrow. And then I've also made a note for, this is a very sloppy D, but it is a D for the dark prints. You need a dark, a light, and medium set of fabrics for this particular block. So I've got it fused on there just with my iron, and now I'm just going to eyeball. You want a little less than 1/4 of an inch. And it doesn't have to be perfect, thank goodness. I am definitely not a perfect piecer, cutter, quilter. It's a good goal to have. So we've got that. Now we're going to have to flip this over. Well, we're not going to flip it over. We're going to flip the edges over and glue these down. And this is where this rotating mat comes in handy. So I've got my glue stick here. I'm going to dab. Now I'm going to put this on the paper, not on the fabric. I'm going to just do a little dab in the corners and a dab or two here in the middle. Doesn't take a whole lot. This glue will wash away. It's water soluble. And then I'm just going to flip it up and sort of press it into place. Give it a little squeeze there. And now I'm going to flip my little mat around. And I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. And I've heard different people say they do opposite sides. I've heard other people say they go around clockwise. This is definitely one of those, whatever works for you. If you have never done paper piecing, English paper piecing before, you may not know yet what works for you. So try a couple different versions, try a couple different methods, and see which one works best for your brain. That's always the way that you should go. We're going to fold this guy into place and flip one more time. I've got too many goodies here in the way. I don't know why, but the rotating mat just makes it a little more fun too. A little more glue here. This is something that you could certainly do watching your son's ball game, watching your daughter gymnastics practice, hanging out, watching a movie with your family. So we've got it all pressed, and we've got these little ears on here. Normally as quilters, we want to lop all of that stuff off. We're going to leave that on. It's tempting, I know. You want to lop it off, but let's leave that on for now. So once we've got that together, then we can put our units together. And the book does a really good job of showing the A and the B, so the light and the dark. So here's the A. This is the dark, the medium, and the light to create this 3-piece unit. And let's do this one today. So we've got our light. We'll say that green is our dark. And this one's going to be our medium. Now we have to assemble them. We have to stitch them together. So we're going to take 2 of them, right sides together. And this is the fun part, guys. I've got my needle handy here with my one little strand of Aurifil thread. I don't have my thimble though, so you might hear me squeal. I'm going to tuck my needle sort of under this fold here, just to help hide that thread tail. Actually, I don't want it quite up there at the end because I want to lock that thread in place. Let's put the glasses on because that will help both of us. And then I'm just going to take a little stitch or 2 here just to help hold that in place. And this is going to be in that seam allowance, so it doesn't have to be super precise. Something you might consider too is using a thread conditioner on your thread if you find that it's tangling on you. I like the idea, but honestly, most of the time I forget to use it. And the other thing I did find using a very fine thread is it was a little less manageable. It kind of had a mind of its own. Okay, now that we're locked in place there, you can see I've got this corner lined up here, and this corner we're going to line up a little better. I'm going to take my thread back through to get to the beginning here. It's almost like sewing backwards. And if you decide that, you know, English paper piecing isn't your thing and you really don't want to go through the effort of doing this whole block, I've said before, I'm not going to tell. You can put another block in there that you love. Maybe there was one that you just really enjoyed or worked really well, or your practice block came out beautifully. Now we're going to connect these two. And you're really just going for a couple threads across the top of each. It's an overcast stitch. I'm hoping you can see just that needle is under just a couple threads. And we're going to pull this through. I'm not going to pull it quite all the way because we do want to lock this into place. Those corners are going to be the weak points. So if I take my needle through that loop and pull that, it's going to give me a nice little knot at the bottom. Nice and snug. And then I'm going to do that one more time. Almost in exactly the same spot, because at this point I still just want to lock those in place. I would be really sad if I did all this work and then the corners came apart. So I'm tucking that needle back through that loop, pull that through, and gently pull, nice and snug. And now we can do that overcast stitch. I'm going to pull these dog ears out of the way. And this is just going to go. You're not really hitting the paper. You're going just above the paper. Part of why you put your glue on the paper and not the fabric is it would make it harder to needle through. It's a really kind of peaceful process, I think, as long as things are going well, right? So I'm curious, have you guys done paper piecing, English paper piecing before? What do you think? I get the sense that it's one of those things people either love it or they hate it. I think I could like it. Like I said, I'm not sure that I would do an entire quilt. That would be a really, really patient thing, and I'm pretty patient, but I'm not sure that I could do the whole thing. So I don't think we need to do the whole thing. You are going to do teeny tiny little stitches though, like 16 to 18 stitches per inch. Typically in quilting, in hand quilting, you're aiming for 10 to 12. And even on our sewing machines, we're aiming for 10 to 12 typically in our quilting stitches. If Dave will kind of peek in here, you can see, you can just sort of see the stitches here. And a lot of times in our hand sewing, we don't want to pull too tight because things pucker. But this is one of those situations where you do really kind of want to pull it nice and snug, because then those stitches should disappear. And we've got a couple spots here. This intersection I think came out pretty nicely. This one's a little off. So just take your time in how you're placing them. You might have to wiggle them into place. It should be a little more accurate maybe than some of your other more challenging pieces because you're doing the foundation on the paper. And then once you get it all done, you can take those papers out. And really it's just a matter of pulling back this guy and peeling him out. It's that easy. And I'm actually not going to peel him out until we're ready to load him into the rest of the quilt. I like that structure and that security. It's a little bit of an insurance policy there. So that's what we've got for our English paper piecing. The next video that we're going to do is another hand sewing. So we've got some more English paper piecing, but it's actually, we're going to make a grandmother's flower from the grandmother's flower garden pattern, and we're going to applique that one onto our block. So keep your hand sewing tools handy. Don't put them away. This one is a very slow block. Cutting out the fabrics is a little slow. Cutting out the templates is a little slow. And of course the stitching is slow. I think that's a good thing. I think we're so busy rushing around that if this forces you to slow down a little bit and try something different, I don't think that's a bad thing. Join us next time for the Granny Sampler, the Grandmother's Flower Garden, as we do more English paper piecing, and let me know what you guys think. Love to hear your comments. Give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying it. Be sure to check out that website, universityofsewing.com. Hit that subscribe button. And for everybody here at the University of Sewing, thanks for joining us.